Live in the morning from Tokyo, Japan, live coming at you as I have done for the last 8 days in a row to talk about what's really happening on the ground in Tokyo, Japan in terms of this coronavirus situation. Forget all that hype out there, forget all that propaganda, forget all that media sort of swirl and speculation and spin, that's the word I'm looking for. What we're doing here is that we're coming live from a park in Tokyo to give you an authentic look at what's going on around the city, and in terms of what the reality is on the ground here, instead of thinking about it through what media and hype and online and all that kind of stuff that blows things out of proportion. I'm trying to give it to you straight as I see it day to day, and that's what I have been doing for the last week, and I'll continue to do as long as is absolutely possible. But I do say at the start of every single one of my videos that I do this because I got an email from YouTube that said that content creators will not profit off of coronavirus content, and because I got that email, I said, right, you know what, I'm going to do coronavirus content because people need to know what's going on in Japan. It's in the news. It appears like, you know, Japan is a city, a country, and Tokyo is a city that's troubled terribly by this coronavirus, and things are not going so well here, shall we say. And I want to give you guys a real perspective on that, to see what it's really like out here and what the situation in Tokyo, Japan really is. But I don't want to profit off of that. It's one of my least favorite things about the internet age, is people profiting off of other people's loss. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to clickbait. I don't want to gain from other people's tough, difficult situations and things like that. So as soon as YouTube sent that email that said this stuff wouldn't be monetized or wouldn't be for the benefit of the channel or the content creator, then I started making this content. So and I have done every day, but I have to add a new thing to the start of the videos, which is if the feed cuts out and you're watching this later on, if this video said part 1 at the start of the title, that means that the video cuts out in the middle and there's a part 2 as well. So as soon as this video stops, there's a part 2 out there as well to find. I won't do part 3s. If the video cuts out 3 times, then we're done. So if that does happen, my apologies. It'll be something to do with my phone's connectivity to the servers, but it is important that I do this on my phone and I do this live, because it gives you that real authentic look at the city and look at what's going on, instead of some edited video that could be put together for somebody's personal reasons, or to push somebody's personal narrative or agenda. So by going live, it means that I can look and show things to you guys that are real and authentic, and we do this every single morning, or we have done this every single morning now for 8 days straight, and I'm hoping to continue doing it as long as is possible. So I appreciate you guys checking out the content, either live or if you're checking out the content after, when this thing's gone live now. Just on a personal note, it's cold. It's cold today. I'm seriously thinking about putting my hood up, but I'll leave it down just for now. But it is cold. It's about 6 degrees Celsius, which is the low 40s in Fahrenheit. And you can see it's very overcast in the city. What you can't see is that it's almost raining. Like there's just a touch of rain in the air. And if that gets worse, I'll put my hood up, and I've got an umbrella in my backpack here. So I'll keep this thing going. But shooting video in the cold and the wet isn't exactly my idea for a Saturday morning. It is Saturday, March the 7th. I forgot to say that at the start of the video. And this is the 8th day. I started on Saturday, February 28th, I think it was. So we've been doing this for a little bit more than a week now, but it is cold today. Apparently next week things will warm up and it will get up to 20 degrees Celsius, but today it's 6 degrees Celsius. And I have been doing this lately. Let me turn this around and point at that right there. That's a clock, and it says 7:40 in the morning, and I'm live in this park and giving you that perspective. 7:40 in the morning, but it's a Saturday, which will be interesting to see what differences there are between the weekdays and the Saturdays. Now I'm looking over to my right to see if they're there. They were there when I arrived, but they aren't there now. Is that there's a group of people of not youthful people, who tend to, there they are there. They're under the top of the thing there now. Where are they? Are they there? Is that them there? So that's the older people who come and do Tai Chi in the park, and they are there today. So that's one of our signs that things aren't a complete disaster in Tokyo, Japan. People are still out there living their lives and doing their things. Another thing that I like to do is to come down here. I'll do this backwards again. I'm on top of a tunnel, and you can see the road runs there, and it runs to that intersection right there, and you can see like cars and trucks and buses and things like that moving around on that intersection there. So that's another marker that things aren't a complete disaster in Tokyo, Japan, that the city hasn't frozen, that life still goes on here for now. Not saying that that's guaranteed to happen in the future, but on this day, Saturday the 7th of March 2020, life does go on. So we've got our Tai Chi people there, we've got the road over there where the traffic and the trucks and the commerce keeps on moving. Now maybe it's because of the rain, maybe it's because it's Saturday, or maybe it's for other reasons, I don't know. But one of our favourite features is not in the park today, and that's father and son playing catch. Maybe 4 out of 7 times we had a father and son playing catch right down there, and they aren't there today. So that's one of our measures. So we've got 2 yeses and 1 no at the moment, and then the final measure that we tend to go for to see how things are in Tokyo, Japan, is over here we go to the Sumidagawa River, which is actually, you should just call it Sumidagawa or Sumida River, because Gawa means river. So saying Sumidagawa River is like saying Sumida River. But we usually do this. Oh, actually, there's 2 for 1 here. So hopefully what you'll see coming into the shot over here, there he is. There's a chap out for his morning run. And then you've got the highway in the background up here with the cars and the traffic moving on it freely, as is normal for this time in the morning, 7:42 in the morning. So and there's another runner doing his morning run down there. So, but these things I think give people out there, it gives them a reality of the situation. People wouldn't be going out for their morning runs, they wouldn't be doing their morning Tai Chi in the park. Trucks and buses and cars wouldn't be driving around the streets if things were in a completely disastrous state, which they are not. That's not to say the potential doesn't exist for them to be. And what I'll do is we'll use, I think I'll stand, actually, you know what, I'll go over a little bit over this way to get a better perspective on this, because when I did this yesterday, I don't know how clear it was to people what I was talking about, but I think if I'm here, we'll be able to give you that perspective. Let me get this right behind me. Where is it? I've lost it. I've lost a huge building. There it is. It's behind my head. Let me go aside a little bit to see if I can get a better angle on that. So, okay, so this right here is the Sumida River, and it goes round in a bend behind me here, and that white sort of line there amongst the trees is a bridge that goes across the river, and then that big building there, kind of pinkish coloured building, is the first building across the river. So everything past that building is Adachi-ku, which is one of the sort of regional parts of Tokyo. Now Tokyo is broken into, well, it's broken into 2 halves, east and west, and the east part is the main part where all the commerce is and all the skyscrapers and all that kind of stuff. The sort of Tokyo part is, and that's where I am. I'm in that east part, and that east part is broken into 23 parts. Now you might call them boroughs, you might call them districts, you might call them I don't know, principalities for all I care. But what they call them in Japan is a ward, or in Japanese a ku. And I live in Arakawa-ku. Over the river past that building there is Adachi-ku, and I can never remember what's on the other side of the river this way. I've got a feeling that it's maybe Sumida-ku or Edo-ku, I'm not sure. But then well, it's not way down, but the river keeps on going down that way, and maybe round about where that building is. Yeah, where that building is there, everything past that is Taito-ku. So you've got 4 of these boroughs all kind of tucked in together here. We're right in the corner where 4 of them meet. And what we're interested in is the fact that I'm in Arakawa-ku, and then that building there marks the start of Adachi-ku. And just yesterday in the news, Adachi-ku were in the news because a family of 6 over there had contracted the coronavirus and hadn't realized for something like a week. So going back into the middle of last week, when schools were still running and when people were mainly just going around their daily lives and doing their daily things, this family of 6 they thought the kids had a cold or something like that, because there was they had a cough, but they didn't have a fever. So this family of 6 have been trucking around doing their regular life, and then they found out a week afterwards, after the schools had closed, like 2 or 3 days after the schools had closed, that that family actually had coronavirus. So what we're waiting for right now is to find out what effect that's had on Adachi-ku back there. And as viruses don't discriminate, unlike humans, unfortunately, as viruses don't discriminate, a virus won't say, oh, I'm going to stay in Adachi-ku and I won't go to Arakawa-ku, or I'm going to stay in I don't know, I'm going to stay in France, but I'm not going to go to Switzerland. The viruses don't respect borders. They don't have an interest in borders, and whether it's a local border between parts of a city or an international border between countries, a virus isn't going to respect that. So the thing we're keeping an eye out for here, for me personally, and I suppose for the city in general, is to find out whether that, what they call a cluster of 6 people, is going to have an effect on the city, is going to have repercussions and spread out, or whether they're going to be able to contain it. So it's kind of gotten a little bit close, practically right behind me. There you go. It's the coronavirus is right behind me, so we'll see if that spreads. But even that news hasn't really changed the way the city goes about its business, goes about its daily life. We're back on top of the tunnel with that intersection behind me here, where you can see still, traffic and trucks and stuff moving around. So yeah, the city doesn't seem particularly changed to me. I haven't noticed any major stockpiling. Already masks and things like that, like medical supplies, in terms of what's the word? There's a word for this and I've forgotten it, but it's like, to sanitize things, sanitization products, alcohol wipes and sprays and gels for your hands and things like that. Those things sold out very, very quickly. And then the next thing to go, I think, was toilet paper, which for some reason people around the world are stockpiling toilet paper. I really don't know why. I had norovirus once, which I would recommend you stockpile toilet paper for. But for this one, I'm not entirely sure. I think I read the only rationale I've read so far for why people would stockpile toilet paper is because they're worried about being quarantined for 14 days and not being able to go out and buy it. So maybe that's the reason why people stockpile their the toilet paper and stuff. But to me, it's not absolutely necessary to do that. But that was the second thing to sort of go here, was toilet paper. And then the third thing is rice. Apparently rice is in shorter supply. So but then, rational people are faced with a bit of a dilemma, because even if you don't believe in the need to stockpile things, if everybody else does and you don't have any left, then you don't have any left, which would be a problem. So even if you don't believe in the need to stockpile, but if everybody else is stockpiling, then you're kind of forced into it, because you have to make sure that you have the things you need to live. So so last night, for example, I went out and I filled my car with petrol. I filled it up with gasoline, because I totally recommend this to you, the viewer out there. Keep an eye on what's happening with the coronavirus, particularly in Iran and Saudi Arabia. And if you're thinking, Iran, Saudi Arabia, miles away from me. Hello, Brazil, welcome. Face mask straight away. But if you're not in Iran or Saudi Arabia, and you're thinking that's miles away from me, that won't affect me. What will happen is, if it really catches on, if it really takes hold in Iran and Saudi Arabia, the oil supply to the world will be reduced quite dramatically. Don't underestimate how much oil they supply to us. And then things like petrol and heating supplies and things like that will start to run low. So keeping your car with a full tank of gas, a full tank of petrol, is my recommendation to you guys out there. But someone from Brazil joined us. Brazil, I think it's the first time we've had a Brazilian in the live. We've had Morocco, we've had Guatemala, we've had Sweden, we've had the UK, we've had America, we've had Australia. Golly, we've had other places too. The Philippines, I think. So it's but Brazil, it's the first time I've had Brazil in the chat, so I appreciate Brazil dropping by. And the comment, in case people didn't see it, is that they've had 13 cases in Brazil. Now, before I came out, I quickly had a check to see where the status is for Japan mainland. We'll call it Japan mainland, and the status here is about 300 cases and 6 deaths. But the numbers for Japan are really confused by that cruise ship that's docked down in Yokohama harbour, because is it Japan, isn't it Japan? That's the question people keep asking, especially the Japanese, because they don't want to be labelled as having, you know, thousands of cases of coronavirus in the country, when it's actually really only 300 cases in the country itself. And then there's also they have 2 asterisks. One is for the cruise ship, and they say, well, here's the real number for the country, and here's the cruise ship numbers. And then the other is for charter, the charters that have come back from overseas, from other countries, that have brought people back to Japan. So the maximum number is something like I think it's like 900 cases and 12 deaths. But if you take out the cruise ship and you take out the charter flights that have brought people back from other countries, then it's like 6 deaths and 300 cases. Now, I prefer to look at the 6 deaths and 300 cases number, because that tells me about what's really happening on the ground here, and what kind of risk people are in. There's no point in looking at a number that includes the cruise ship, because nobody's going to go on the cruise ship, and it's not going to spread out from the cruise ship. So it doesn't really affect real life. But what does affect real life is that number, 300 cases and 6 deaths, and that gives you a measure of how things are here in Japan. But then that, you know, if you do a quick bit of maths, 306, so that is that, golly, 333.6, that's 2%, I think. I hope my math is good. That's 2%. But in other countries, I've seen the numbers be a lot higher than that in terms of percentages. I think Iran's numbers are around 10% of 10% of the cases that they found have ended in mortality and or death, I should say. And I think that's to do with the health system. That the Japanese health system is very efficient. It's very well stocked, well resourced. The infrastructure is there to deal with it. The government itself is very efficient. So you know, testing and things like that, making sure that as soon as people test positive, then procedures are put in place. But in countries that are less affluent, I mean, let's face it, Japan's a rich country, and in countries that are less affluent and have less infrastructure and less medical care to take care of things, you might see a higher mortality rate because of their ability to cope with the number of people out there. So and what they're saying right now is globally the mortality rate for this thing is 3.8%, and globally the mortality rate for influenza is 0.1%, but that 0.1% is based on known, I don't know if it's known cases, but it's like predicted or estimated cases, but they can't estimate how many cases of coronavirus there have been, because this is the first time there have ever been cases of coronavirus. So the coronavirus number is based on Germany 670. It's a lot more than I was expecting. France 653. And these are you know, these are concerning numbers. You have to say, you know, they are concerning numbers. And but I've said all along, like, I'm not Spain 400. That's where my mum lives. My mum lives in Spain, and she's just turned 17, and apparently it's her age demographic that are most at risk from this thing. So it is a concern for me in those departments. But that's really the big deal for the whole thing, is that we're really looking at trying to protect people who are vulnerable to this thing. Are we lagging a little bit? I see it a lot in the news that they talk about, you know, the age of people who passed away from this and their physical health, because basically the older you are and the less healthy you are, the more vulnerable you are to this. So so it's pre-existing conditions and things like that people are at risk from. So one of the reasons why we're taking these extreme measures isn't to protect the young and healthy, it's actually to protect the more advanced in years and those who have pre-existing conditions. And that, to me, really points at Africa as well, as if this virus gets into Africa, it's going to cause absolute... I'm not going to be too extreme about it, because I don't like to flare things up and make people panic unnecessarily. But with Africa's, you know, lack of infrastructure and relative poorness in the world and the high number of people with HIV, I wouldn't be surprised if this thing getting into Africa, where they don't have adequate health care and they do have a large number of people with compromised immune systems, that you could see quite a lot of challenges. So now I'm going to go for step one, which is to put up this hood because it has started to rain a little bit. Do I really want to do that? Do I really want to go live from a hood? I don't know if I want to go live from a hood. Man alive, that looks weird. You know what, I'm going to suffer the rain. There you go. Just suffer the rain. I do have an umbrella in my bag. This being Japan, everybody carries umbrellas with them all over the place. So I do have an umbrella in my bag. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. So I'll try and keep myself warm, even though it is only 6 degrees, and it feels like this could be quite strong rain. And actually my major concern would be my phone getting wet rather than myself getting wet. So I'm gonna have to do something about this, because this is going to be significant rain. So but it is, yeah, it's now 7:55 in the morning on Saturday the 7th of March. So I've had quite a few comments from people asking about whether they should travel to Japan, people who are planning to come here, and of course, you know, lots of people travel to Japan all the time. I'm going to actually head over to a place, you know, just over here, if you'll forgive me for the sudden movements. I know it's the camera's not very steady when I'm shooting that live outside, but what I'll do is see if I stand here. Hello. Is this tree going to offer me any protection from the slight rain that's falling just now? A little bit. But people come to Japan for these things, for the cherry blossoms and for the you know, the natural kind of environment and things like that. So people are planning to come, especially in spring, in late March and early April. It's a very popular time to come to Japan for the cherry blossoms and things like that. So a lot of people have been saying in the comments, you know, what's the situation like? Should I come? What's it really like on the ground? Are shops open? Are restaurants open and stuff like that? And basically daily life continues as normal. Restaurants, shops, shopping malls, all those kind of things are open, with the exception of schools. Schools are now all closed for people. My trip to Japan starts on April 29th. So yeah, no, I'm more than happy to drop by and do this. You're actually the second Joao I know from Brazil, unless you're also the first Joao I know, but you're going by a different family name. Are you the Joao I know? Yeah, the shops and buses and trains are all running as usual. There's no real difference to what life is like in the city right now. So there isn't much of a change there. But the big thing, there's two big things to think about in terms of coming to Japan right now. One is that travel by flight, by plane, you know, you're enclosed in a small space with the same people for, I don't know, like 10, 12 hours, breathing air that they recycle. So that might not be something that you're thrilled about doing. And then the other thing is that airports are a place where people gather in huge numbers. You know, like it's a sort of focal point where people come from many different places. And again, you're exposing yourself to a lot of different people at one time. So I don't know if that's an ideal place to be when you're trying to avoid something like this. But actually in Japan itself is, you know, life continues as normal right now. There is talk of them declaring a state of emergency sometime early next week, which will give the government the power to sort of to make more definitive statements, and perhaps at that time they will change, you know, their procedures for bringing people into the country and whether or not they screen people and things like that. So I'm just moving over to the other side of the walkway here. There might be a bit more protection from the rain under this thing here. So let me see if standing here, oh, that makes a huge difference. Man, look at that, eh? I'm sure in like spring and summer there's all leaves and flowers and stuff on this thing, but right now it's kind of a, I don't know, it's kind of a weird looking background. I feel like I'm in a sci-fi movie or something. So But yeah, as far as coming to Japan, like daily life continues as normal right now, and everybody seems to be doing okay, and there doesn't seem to be too much disruption to society and the life and you know, your daily life in general. However, I am kind of concerned about people coming here and the risk that, you know, if you're coming here for a 2-week holiday and they have mandatory 14-day quarantine, okay, come here, get quarantined for 2 weeks and go back home again. So that would be something I think people need to research very carefully to make sure that they're not flying into a situation of you know, mandatory quarantines. And equally, I think people need to be a bit careful about what their own country will do for people returning from Japan. So if you're in a country that when people fly from Japan to your country, they actually quarantine you, you could face 2 consecutive 2 weeks of quarantine for a total of 4 weeks. 2 weeks of quarantine in Japan and 2 weeks of quarantine in your home country. So if that is the case, if you do end up getting quarantined here or getting quarantined in your home country after your visit, that would be something that you need to research and work out. The problem with that though is that not only is it country by country, but even some countries it's state by state. And now if you take China for example, last week, I don't know if this is still true, but last week I read that in Shanghai they have a rule that they will quarantine people who come from countries at risk, and they didn't list the countries. They just said, you know, we'll come you know, people who come from these countries, and then you know, countries who are at risk from the coronavirus, they will need to be quarantined. But then Beijing, which is obviously also in China, they listed, you know, if you come from these countries, we will quarantine you for 14 days, or you will be required to quarantine for 14 days. So even within China, you've got a mixed message there from the main city, the capital city, Beijing, and then I guess the second city, I think we can say Shanghai is the second city of China, giving you mixed messages on whether or not you'd be facing a quarantine or not. So, so definitely, you know, make sure that you know before you travel what to expect when you arrive here in Japan. Hey, I got my first thumbs up, thank you. You got the arrive in Japan, like, you know, is the country that you're arriving from going to put you at risk from a quarantine upon arrival here in Japan? But also, after you've finished in Japan and you fly back to your home country, does your home country have rules about people arriving from Japan that they're going to you're going to be required to quarantine? So so for the travelers out there, as it currently stands, the way life is here in Japan right now, as I showed you at the start of this video, you've got people doing Tai Chi in the park, you've got people out for their morning run and their morning jog, you've got people out walking their dogs, you've got cars running on the highway as normal, you've got busy intersections still busy as normal, so that I'm not seeing anything and the usual things that we measure. Now we measure these things every single morning when I do these live shows. Every single morning we measure how many cars are on the road, measure if the people doing Tai Chi are there. Usually behind me here, just through that gap in the tree there, there's a father and son playing catch, but maybe they read the weather report unlike me, and actually I knew it might rain today, to be honest. That's why I have a backpack and an umbrella, but maybe that's why they're not playing catch today. But that's how we're kind of measuring it in the real terms, not through you know, not in terms of hype or media or spin or propaganda or any of those things, just in real terms, standing here in a park in Japan. Oh look, there's the people who do Tai Chi every day, they're still doing Tai Chi. Oh look, there's a bunch of cars on the highway over there, people are still going around their daily lives. So as it stands today on Saturday the 7th of March, yes, life is just trucking along as normal here in Tokyo, Japan. But there are concerns about what will come down the line next week. That case that I was talking about earlier in the video, that building there marks the neighboring district, and they have some cases in the neighboring district that we're keeping an eye on to see if that's going to spread out or cause concern and situations in the community at large. And then also just in general, I mean, 300 cases right now in Japan. I think down in Osaka they have some challenges with people who went to live shows, and then there's a bunch of people gathered together in a small space, and there seems to be what they call clusters forming down there, but they're trying their best to contain this thing. Right now my eyes are on Iran, and to be honest, apologies to any Americans out there, but America seems to be having quite a real uptick in the number of cases, and I think they're already at something like 10 deaths, whereas here in Japan we're just at 6. So it's a concern. I think America is a concern, and one of my concerns about America is it's the land of the free. And every country has its own identity and its own culture and its own way of dealing with things. But in America, it's the land of the free, where people are used to free will and doing things independently. I mean, Independence Day celebrated on July 4th, the land of the free, all that kind of stuff, If you look at the American Constitution, the freedom of the individual is very much enshrined in it. But the thing is, with a thing like this, it requires a group response. It requires us to move as a group, as a herd. It requires society to move as one, so that we can take effective measures to protect against the potential risks. And to be honest, I'm concerned about America's ability to do that, because the sort of way that hiking deep, but just talking about America, the way that society is structured there, and the risk from people not paying attention to advice and things like that. So yeah, so Hiking Deep just dropped into the live chats from Arkansas in the US. So we were just chatting away about what things are like here in Tokyo, Japan. Not much changing day to day at the moment. We do have concerns. I don't know if you were in the live stream the other day, Hike, when we were talking about how that building there marks the start of the next district over in Tokyo, and how they have some pretty serious cases going on there. And just so you know, I'm under this sort of tree thing here because it's raining, and the first 20 minutes of this live I was able to be kind of out where I normally would be. Let me show you behind. That's where we normally would be. There's the clock, which tells you it's 8 o'clock in the morning right now, and it's 6 degrees, which is about 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So a state of panic literally in California, I believe. What's it called now? Is it a state of emergency, which they might declare here. It's cool, eh? I was saying it kind of makes me feel like I'm in a sci-fi movie or something though. But yeah, they're saying in California a state of emergency, I think, which I think in American terms, a state of emergency is a lot to do with federal funding, and you're open to federal funds that you would not have access to. But in Japan, I know that a state of emergency gives the government powers to make decisions without going through the normal due process, which is a bit scary. You don't want people just making decisions without having been analysed, or without having opposite opinions heard and things like that, because that leads to it doesn't end well, let's just put it that way. But they're thinking about doing that here in Tokyo, Japan. They're thinking about bringing in a state of emergency, which would give the government the power to take over businesses if they needed to. For example, the mask supplying business, they might take that over and start churning out hundreds of thousands of masks. But equally, they could make laws about curfews and things like that, stopping people going out on the streets by law. Right now, they advise the schools are closed, but they aren't legally closed and things like that. So if they do start a state of emergency here in Tokyo, Japan, then it'll be interesting to see what effect that has on daily life. But right now, people are in the park, even in the rain, doing the Tai Chi. They're out for their morning runs. A couple of people have passed us on this running track right here already while I've been tucked in. It's cold though, man. 6 degrees, 42, 43 degrees Fahrenheit. It's cold. Yeah, people are still going about their daily lives. Trump said it's a bad virus, the best virus, as he waved his infant-sized hands around. Trump, yeah, he's not the most informed chap. Old President Trump. He seems to just make statements without much information behind them. And I urge people out there, and this has not got anything to do with Trump, to be honest. Fake news. It started here. You heard it here first. So it's a bad virus, the best one there ever was. But you can hear him saying it. That's the sad thing. But what I would urge people to do, and I was about to say a thing that's relevant to that, is when you hear things, question them. That's all you need to do. When you hear somebody say something, question it and say, you know what, that person just said that in Tokyo, Japan, life is fine and people seem to be going about their daily business. Okay, that's one person's perspective. I will question that. I'll go out there and I'll find another perspective and I'll get my information from another source. I'm not just going to rely on one person who may or may not be well informed or who may or may not have their own agenda. For all you guys know, I might own a travel company and I might rely heavily on international travel coming to Tokyo, Japan. So I'm just gonna fake it that everything's fine here so that people keep coming, because I need that for my business. I'm not, just for, you know, clarity's sake, I don't work in travel at all, and my business doesn't depend on the international movement of people around the world. But I guess my business will be affected in the same way any other domestic business in Japan will be. But you don't know that, you know, and even though I said that, you still don't know that. You've got no way of knowing my credentials or whether or not I am legitimately, you know, giving you the news straight from Tokyo, Japan, in that real kind of, here's what's really happening, here's the real perspective. So you should question that, and I wouldn't be offended if people questioned that at all. I'd respect people if they did that, and I think we should do that more. I think people are a little too quick just to believe what they hear without questioning it, and that comes back to something I talked about in an earlier live about news and how I do not like news that gives opinions. I like news that gives me facts, and then I gather the facts and I draw my own conclusion, and I make my own opinion. I don't just parrot back some dude's opinion from the news, and it makes me uncomfortable to see how much news these days relies on opinion and people giving their opinions, and then the watcher at home not needing to think about it. Trump thought the head of the CDC, Center for Disease Control, was Dr. Zeus. I could believe it. I'm going to go ahead and say fake news again. What we should do is we should play a game like that, where you say three things and one of them's fake news and one of them's not, and see if people can guess which one's fake news and which one isn't. So but anyway, guys, it's getting on a bit. I know my battery starts to go dead around about 30 minutes, and we're up to that 30-minute mark, especially in the cold. And the other day I didn't get a warning on the no, I don't believe that. No. Oh, I do not like them in a car. I do not like them near and far. I do not like them here or there. I do not like them anywhere. That can't be true. So yeah, but my phone, usually when your battery's about to die, you get like a 20% warning and a 10% warning and stuff like that. But I didn't get that the other day, and my phone just went black. And I was like, I didn't get a chance to say farewell or anything. That was around about the 30-minute mark. So, and I did have 100% battery before starting that live. So it kind of worries me. And I know in the cold, these things, our Tangerine King said so. You should hike it deep. You should check out tango adverts from the 90s in the UK. There were these tango adverts that involved this orange guy running around doing things, because tango's an orange drink. So it's good to see you dropping by too. Thanks for dropping by. I do appreciate it. But I do, like I say, I have to get off before this turns black on y'all, and we can't see it. It's Saturday morning. It's cold. It's just turned 8 o'clock, and you can see there's people. Look at that. It's a great way to finish the video. Again, it's one of the reasons why I like to go live, is so you can see the real situation. Look, there's people in the rain, still getting out there and playing a bit of basketball there, and that I hope gives people that kind of trust that what I tell you and what I show you is the real situation on the ground here, and not actually the hype or the spin or the propaganda or any of those things. But I want to get off before my battery dies. So thank you guys very much for checking out my content live, or checking it out if you're watching it after the fact. I truly appreciate it. I'm going to try and do this every single day. Question everything, yes. And just by questioning something, you're not disrespecting it. So the comment was, yes, question everything, and you're not disrespecting something, you're actually respecting it by questioning it. So people shouldn't feel precious about doing that. Do it of yourself, do it of politicians, do it of the things you see. So for now though, take care everybody, have a good day, wherever you are, stay safe and healthy and happy. And I said something at the end of a video the other day that I liked, and I'm going to say it again. It's just be the best you that you can be. So and until tomorrow, I'm going to sign off. Thank you guys for checking out the content, and I'll see you guys soon.